friends, and welcome to the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, also known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I may be an old dog, but I'm always trying to learn new tricks. In each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. As a good friend likes to say, we're better together. So I hope this podcast will help school librarians connect with and learn from each other. The opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. And because school librarians always strive to be good digital citizens, I cite sources when using material that is not my own. Without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, I am here with my friend Gab, and I am very excited to have Gab here because I don't often get a lot of New Jersey folks, and she has this really cool lesson that I have already started to my brain's already starting to whir as I was kind of looking it over. So I'm really excited to share this. But Gab, why don't you take a second, introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about who you are.
Okay, thanks for having me on the podcast, Steve. This is very exciting for me too. My name is Gabrielle Casieri. I go by Gab, never Gabby. My mother indoctrinated me to not like that nickname. My pronouns are she and her, and I currently work at Lawrence Intermediate School, which is 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and that's in central New Jersey. Lawrence is between Trenton and Princeton.
Okay. I'm glad you gave us the pin drop there because I don't know if I could have found it otherwise.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, wait, where is that? And our school system here currently is K-3 elementary. So we have 4 elementaries and they all meet here at the intermediate school in 4th grade. And then our middle school is 7th and 8th grade and then high school.
That's an interesting, we've got a similar breakout, but we've only got one of each school. So you must have a lot of interesting interactions when they're all coming from different schools together.
We do.
So I'm curious, before we dive into the lesson, how did you end up in school librarianship?
So interesting story. When I was an English major in college, and my big plan when I was 18 or whatever was I was going to be a professor. And so I graduated and I went to the College of New Jersey when it was still Trenton State. And I started my master's degree in English, but my husband and I were moving around. He was changing jobs and we wound up relocating a few times. And one of my professors said to me, "Have you ever considered being a librarian?" And I said, "Oh, you need a master's degree for that?" So I was one of those people. And I never finished my master's degree in English, and I wound up just doing a lot of administrative jobs. And when my kids were little, I volunteered in their school library, and I fell in love with everything that was happening there. And so when I went to Rutgers, and when my son started 1st grade, I went to library school, and that's the end of the story. It was amazing. I love it. Barbara Brandt inspired me. She was terrific.
Yeah, man, that would be such a great thing for people who are considering education in any way, shape, or form to just go through different roles and spend a day or two seeing, because you might know you want to be in education, but it never even occurred to me to be a school librarian until years and years down the road.
Right. And a lot of times somebody suggests it, right? Like that one professor who said to me, he said, "You seemed like a bibliophile, like someone who loves books." And he said, "I really think it would be a good fit for you." And I was thinking, yeah, okay, that sounds cool. And I had always loved libraries, but it wasn't until I got into my kids' elementary school library that I really saw what the lessons she was teaching. I saw the behind the scenes, and I thought, you know what? I think this is what I want to do.
Yeah. It's kind of the best of all worlds in my mind, but I'm biased.
Agree. We're librarians, right? So we did it. So we know. It's a secret.
So you're going to share with us the Curiosity Project. And I'm kind of curious, how did this lesson come about? What was the genesis of this lesson?
That's a great question. So when I first started here at LIS, and by the way, this is my 13th year, and this is my only school that I've ever worked at. So it's my dream job. But in my first year, I was only teaching 6th grade library skills. And the way it worked in my school was that I was the teacher's prep, right? So I was basically kind of teaching in a bubble. I could tell the kids, take this back to your class. But I wound up doing a research project with them that they could complete in my semester or marking period for me. And so I talked about this previously. We always used to research what cell phone they wanted, because this was 2011, 2012. A lot of the kids didn't have phones yet. One of the kids wrote a persuasive essay before Christmas, and his parents bought him a phone, and he was very thrilled about that, and so was I. But, I did that for a couple of years, and then I started branching out to, Genius Hour became really popular, but I came across this idea of a curiosity project, which was something that students are curious about. And so what I'm teaching them is the research process and product. But what they are learning about is something they want to find out more. And there's a couple sort of restrictions. It has to be something you want to find out more about, right? If you're already an expert, I am not going to approve that topic for you. And we do have some kids who are like, I already know everything about this. Well, then you're going to be researching something else. But I really wanted, I found it online, right? I stumbled across the idea of a curiosity project, and I really fell in love with the idea because I think for our students, a lot of times they're being asked to research something that they don't care that much about. And what I convinced them and their teachers is that the research process is the same.
Right.
Getting sources, citing them, taking notes, organizing your information, doing a presentation. You need that for a lot of things in your life. And so I found that them getting to choose their topic, which they almost never get to do, and research anything they want, really made them invested in the project. And they didn't mind learning how to use noodle tools, doing an outline, taking notes, doing their citations, and doing a presentation.
Yeah, I mean, anytime we can give them that control and that agency over what they're going to learn and how they're going to learn it, we almost automatically get buy-in because now they're getting to be in charge, which they don't frequently get to do in school.
Exactly. Yeah. And library isn't a tested subject. Like I can do what I want, right? I have my standards and my skills that I need to be teaching them, but I can write my own curriculum. And so for me, I started using this, and I really never had to change it because every year the kids are interested in different stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And it was great for me as well, because I'll be honest, the first year or two of cell phone research, when I had 300 sixth graders telling me, it was cool and I loved their enthusiasm, but I myself was ready to hear about something else. So I also found that during the presentation piece, the class is more engaged because everybody's talking about something different.
Right. That's a great point.
And I did make them do an individual project. They always want, can I work in a group with all my friends? And I said, you can get your friends to help you with the presentation, but everybody has to do their own research because it was really important for them to be able to learn the skills on their own. And I found that the best way for that to happen was for them to have their own topic.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I haven't done a project quite like this, but in similar orbits. And I absolutely agree. Like if you're letting them start working together, you're going to have that one kid who's going to do all the research and then the other kid's not getting those skills. And it's like, well, that's the whole purpose.
Well, and they also start thinking, oh, well, so-and-so put it in Noodle Tools, so I didn't. And it's like, well, no, you also need to learn how to do that because it's important. So, that was a restriction that I placed, but it was more for them being able to master the skills that we were teaching rather than not letting them work as
And I love that not only is this reinforcing what they're doing in the classroom, but it's also just good day-to-day practice. Like as good digital citizens, they should be thinking about what sources am I using? And if I share information, am I citing my sources? Like all that kind of stuff.
Yes,
love it.
For sure.
So is this a graded lesson? Like, do they actually get a score for this, or is it more the experience?
So again, in my school, it can be a little bit complicated. It is included in their library skills grade. So I grade them on did they master noodle tools? Did they use there was a requirement that they had to use at least 3 sources, right? So do they have 3 sources? I really wasn't grading the presentation part, and sometimes we ran out of time for everybody to do one. But it was part of their library skills grade.
Nice.
So yes. But my grades are fluid in that I can assign like how much weight it's going to have in the course. It wasn't like this is 1/3 of your final grade, right? And in 4th and 5th grade, we have standards-based grading. 6th grade is the only kids in our school who actually get number grades. So that's also very stressful for them. So it was graded because of the way that my school works, but I've also taught this class as pass-fail.
Right. Oh, yeah, I can totally see that.
Depending if they let me do that, right, in my district. And so if it's pass-fail, again, I'm just kind of checking off, did they master the skill? And by the way, they all do, because I make sure they do. Right. It's one of the things about doing this type of project is I can walk them through how to use Noodle Tools, which is what we use. We have a district subscription. So we use Noodle Tools, and they're going to need that in middle school. If they do, I think it's the National History Competition. There is a history competition that requires Noodle Tools for the submissions.
Interesting.
So, and that's a middle school. So we set them up for that. But also, once they get the hang of using a program like that, when they go to high school, college, they can use ref notes and the more complicated ones. I used Noodle Tools the whole time I was at Rutgers.
Nice.
Because it's easy.
I was using, I think they had RefWorks, and that was super simple. Now I use my bib, and it's such a breeze. But I've heard great things about Noodle Tools. It's on my list of things I need to check out, but that list is about 8,000 miles long right now. So designed
by teachers.
Nice. I kind of jumped at this backwards. I was talking about the grading before we actually even talked about what's going on in the lesson. So let me take a step back. I'm going to pretend that I'm the student, and I'm coming into the library. I'm assuming I'm coming in with a class. It sounds like this is a class lesson.
You're coming in with a class, and you have a netbook, a Chromebook.
So I come in, I sit down. What am I going to see? Like, how do you start this off?
Okay, so we start off and I say, class, we are going to do a research project and you get to choose what you're going to research. And then it takes about 5 minutes for all the talking to die down and the excitement. And then I explain to them, it has to be something you're curious about, something that you want to learn more about. And then, of course, they always ask, can it be anything? Well, you have to be able to find school-appropriate sources. So a lot of my kids are like, can I do, Lil Nas X? Okay, sure. But you can't use their social media as a source. That doesn't count. It has to be interviews or, articles that were written about their career. And so a lot of times we'll start off by them loosely choosing their idea for a topic. And I ask them, choose 3 things that you want to learn more about. So one kid wanted to do aglets. That's the end of the shoelace.
Okay.
And I immediately told him, that's not big enough. You can find out in 5 minutes all about it. So, but he was really invested in that, and he wound up doing shoelaces, which went back to ancient Greece and like using intestines of animals, dried intestines, to lace up sandals and stuff. Interesting stuff that I never knew. But I would ask them to choose 3 things that they're interested in, that they think they can learn more about. And then I would ask them to take that time, probably the next 15 minutes or so, to start looking online to see if there are sources that they can access. Especially right now with Google sort of cracking down on making sure that everything is COPPA compliant. There are a lot of things that they can't access in school. And we do this project in school as part of class. It's not homework. So they have to be able to access the sources in school. And many of their topics, I have a lot of databases, but many of them did not fall into that. Like one student did 80s fashion.
Oh, that's fun.
Right? Which was so fantastic. And the jacket she brought in, I used to have. It was her mom's. And I was like, oh, can I try it on? It had shoulder pads and a peplum, right? And it was just huge buttons.
Love it.
And I was like, yes, I recognize this. But that's a great example. 80s fashion. That student went online, got different information from designers, had pictures, had some magazine articles about 80s fashion, and then for their presentation, they did a fashion show.
That's...
And that was included their friends, right? So they all came parading in wearing her mom's old 80s clothes, which was really
That's
awesome.
awesome.
So what I tell the kids, you have to have 3 choices. Hopefully one of them works out while they start researching to see if there are available sources online. Then I conference with them and I have to approve their topic. So I had a kid who was a chess master and he wanted to do chess. No.
Yeah.
He did juggling. And I have a video of him at the end where he taught himself how to juggle, and he does a little thing with the balls in front of his face at the end that was just so funny. And it was really awesome because he learned about something new.
Love that.
So if they come out and say, oh, I already know about this, or my dad does this, then I just tell them, let's pick something else, because I want you to learn something new, and it's going to be boring if you already know everything.
And I see that you've got some suggestions for if they get stumped, like they're not quite sure where to go. And I've got 2 questions about your suggestions list. Question 1 is, the second to last one is tightrope walking, but it's got the technical term for tightrope walking.
Funambulism.
Okay, so that's what I was wondering. Was it funambulism or was it funambulism? So funambulism, okay.
I looked it up and it said funambulism, I believe. Is this still the correct pronunciation?
That one I saw it and I was like, that's interesting. And then the other, like there's lots of great topics here. And one of them is just teeth. And I don't know why, but when I saw just teeth, I was like, it just made me crack up. Where did teeth come from?
I don't even know. So the guy whose template I loosely based this on, I think that was in his, but I've had students. One kid brought in a model of a tooth that he made.
I mean,
that was his presentation.
I can see how there would be lots of things you could look into. It was just such a sort of out of left field.
I know. And that's why that list is so random, is whenever somebody did something cool that I thought other kids would be interested in researching, I put it in. And so, like the origin of glitter, I had somebody every single time. And it goes back to caves and mica and little bits of stone. Like, I'm telling you, these kids, once they were like, really? You're going to let me find out about that? Yes, I am.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So they pick a couple of topics. They're doing some research. You're going around the conference with them. And I would imagine when you're conferencing, you're kind of checking on how you're doing with sources. Where do you think you're going to go?
Yes. They bring their computer to me. So I have a round table in the library. So they come meet me at my table. They bring their computer so that I can get a gander at some of the sources they're thinking about. I have had kids need to change their topics because this is literally just a look, right? It's entirely possible that then it's going to be hard or they're going to have not enough information. So they need at least 3 sources.
Okay.
That's the project requirement. And we usually, from start to finish, I would see them every other day for a marking period. And the total number of days I would see them was usually like 22. Okay. So we would probably spend 12 days on this project.
Okay. So this is definitely a nice, like they're really digging in. It's meaty.
It's a chunk. It's like the last, usually in a marking period, if it's the last month. But yeah, they're digging in, but also because it takes time to teach them the skills and things like evaluation. And in my lesson plan, I have the big 6, which was originally what we were using, but it's just the idea that they need to consider their sources. Right? Who put this there? Why is it there? They also need to be able to properly cite it. They need to be able to paraphrase. They need to be able to do a presentation in a way that's not just regurgitating information. And so with the conference, I approve their topic and I put it in a spreadsheet so that they can't come back later and say, what? That's not what I wanted. And then I take a quick look at their sources. A lot of times I'm able to guide them into something different or maybe choose a second or third choice depending on what their initial look came up with. Then the next class, so that's the first class, that takes up the whole first class. But by the end of that introduction, everybody usually has a topic.
Okay.
And then within the first week, they figure out, I have to change this. So then the next class, I show them how to log into Noodle Tools. And I have it set up so they can do a Google single sign-on. We use Google Apps for education. So they can set up their account, do a Google single sign-on, and I show them how to take notes first. And Noodle Tools has note cards that look like note cards. And you have to name each one, like what it is about, right? You don't just want to say note card 1. So they start to get an idea of what that looks like. And I can see them. Their projects are shared with me. So I can look at everything they're doing. And then going from there, I show them how to cite their sources in Noodle Tools again, and they can connect those to the note cards. One of the most fun things about this is they have 3 minutes to present however they want.
Okay.
The final product is completely up to them. So I've had a fashion show. I've had a slideshow with juggling. I had a kid who asked me if he could demonstrate tightrope walking in the library. And I said no, because he wanted to tie like a jump rope between 2 tables. I was like, no, you're not doing that.
Clearly didn't study physics.
Right. I was like, that just feels dangerous and we're not going to have that. I've had students demonstrate sports equipment. Like a kid came and showed, he's a hockey goalie.
Okay.
And he talked about some of the skills you need to be a hockey goalie. And then he put on his whole kit and a lot of the kids had never seen, like the pads are huge. Yeah. So one of my most favorite presentations ever was a student who had a little bit of an obsession with the French Revolution. And he made a Google slideshow, which was beautiful, but 3 minutes. And he had like 27 slides. It was a lot. And I said, Matthew, I really hope you can do it. And I had a timer. The kids would get buzzed when they were done because it isn't fair to let some go on for. So he started talking and he was looking at me and he started talking faster and faster. And when I tell you that every kid in the class was leaning forward on the edge of their seat, getting information about the French Revolution and waiting, and he spoke the last word as the timer went off and he got a standing ovation. Everyone went crazy. And the principal came in and said, what did he present on? I said, the French Revolution. But it was just,
That's awesome.
It's a fun project.
Well, and when they are able to do what they want to do, they bring that passion, they bring that interest. And when you have passion for your topic, your audience has passion for your topic. So that's such a great way to kind of get everybody on board.
Yeah, they get sucked in. One of my kids wanted to do axolotl, which now is a little more popular, but at the time I was like, what? So she was artsy and she painted a painting of an axolotl. And that was her presentation. She came and talked about its habitat, but she was just talking while she showed her painting that she made. Super cool. And the thing is, like I said, I can see in Noodle Tools, I can see their note cards, I can see their sources, I can see their citations. And so it didn't matter as much that they needed to have it like in a paper or a slideshow or a brochure. And I feel like that for a lot of them, it bogs them down in restricting. And because this was something that was exciting to them, I said, you can decide. You can just stand up there and talk. I always had a few kids that would just do that. You can do a slideshow. That was probably a lot, right? But then, some of them would bring in art. One kid made a little soccer, like in a shoebox, a soccer field that you could play. His dad helped him, he said, but you could kind of like foosball, but it was like in cardboard. Super
Very
cool.
clever. Do they have to do their presentation live? Like, could they record it and play it?
At the time that we were doing these the most, I haven't done this since the pandemic, just because my own circumstances here in the school have changed and I don't teach 6th grade anymore. I co-teach with the teachers, which is great. But I don't get to give them my own project. some of them did do like a YouTube video.
Nice.
One kid was doing skateboard tricks. So he recorded a YouTube video and we played that as his presentation.
Nice.
So yeah, they needed to be in the class while it was happening, but yes, they could do it on their own time. And this was the only time teachers would laugh about the kids begging, can I please, please, please work on this at home? Because I used to tell them, this is your classwork. Like, this is what we're doing in class for the next 12 days. And so usually I need 2 days for presentations at 3 minutes each.
So it sounds like the bulk of it is we're going to do research, and we're going to, I imagine as you're teaching them the skills and then they're going and applying those skills, do you end up spending much time sort of, do the kids come to you and be like, look, I'm having trouble with this, or, hey, where should I go looking for that? Like, does it become sort of like one-on-ones in between lessons?
There's a lot of one-on-one conversations that happen, which is another reason why I like them each having their own topic, because I can get right in there with them and help them figure out. So sometimes they'll come to me and say, this doesn't have enough information, or this was an interview, but he didn't really say anything. I'm going to have to change my person or my topic. And for them to find that out on their own is, one of our teachers calls it productive struggle.
Yes.
Right? So these kids are learning that you don't always get the instant Google gratification, which they're used to now, right? They're accustomed to, if they need to answer a question, they just type it in and they get an answer that they're happy with. We don't love them doing that, right? As librarians, we're trying to get away from that model. But when they're doing this type of research and I'm asking them for information, and they have to figure out too. So if they're doing a biography, are they going to talk about someone's inventions? Are they going to talk about their life? I don't want a book report, and you only have 3 minutes to tell us the cool stuff. So it helped them. They would find their source. They would have to figure out, what do I want to put on these note cards? Like, what does taking notes mean? Well, it means writing down the important thing. And the thing I love about the Noodle Tools note cards, it has a spot for you to put copied directly from the text, and then another spot on the same note card for you to paraphrase it. So we worked on that a lot too, where, how are you going to put this in your own words? Explain it to me like I'm in 6th grade, right? And sometimes that's more words than what the original one had. Kids struggle with that, or they'll be getting out the thesaurus. No, thank you. Just explain it to me. What does this mean? And so, and because the other kids are engaged in their own research and they're enjoying the topic, it was manageable for me to do that. Like, every class, I would be going around table to table, individual students, helping them figure things out. And everyone else was being pretty chill, because sometimes you can't do that. Right? You turn your back and everyone's going crazy in the background. But that generally did not happen. And so I had the opportunity to work closely with a lot of the students who needed the extra support, which was great.
And that was actually one of my questions, was going to be like, what kind of supports do you have or build into the lesson? But I guess the nature of the lesson is the students are selecting the topic. So whatever level they're at or whatever skill set they're bringing, they can pick something that's going to fit with their comfort and ability, and you're able to go and give them individual support as needed.
Yes. And then, as you asked at the beginning, I'm assessing them, but I know what they're doing. So the way our specials work, a self-contained class comes with a general education class. Okay, all together. And usually there will be an aide in the class. So that's nice, because a lot of times they can help reinforce, like, oh, this is what we're supposed to be doing right now. But still, I was always the one who was helping them. I remember we had 2 kids who had just come from Guatemala and really spoke no English. So I let them do their research in Spanish, but they had to present in English. And they used Translate, and they practiced with their ELL teacher. And I told their ELL teacher that we were doing that. But their presentations were so simple because it was the English learning. And they presented on, both of them presented on Guatemala. And so they told us about the country that they came
Nice.
from. And they were so excited and happy. And some of them included like family photos and stuff.
Nice.
Really, really
Oh,
nice. Really
love
nice.
that.
But that was a way for me to help them further their goal of speaking English better. But I wasn't going to tell them, you know, you can't do this project or you have to find English sources. That was too challenging for them with their language skills where they were.
Right. So in terms of resources, it sounds like you are using Noodle Tools as sort of a central hub for a lot of what they're doing. And then in terms of the resources that they're drawing from, it seems like it's pretty open. Could be.
It can be anything. I always try and get them, hey, do I have a book in the library about that? Great, let's use it. And kids sometimes forget that books can be sources because they've gotten so accustomed to doing everything online. But yeah, Noodle Tools is the research process. It has everything I need. And that helps the students have everything. I always tell them it's like that big binder you carry around, but nothing can fall out of it, right? And they're like, oh, that's great. But Noodle Tools is where the process happens and where their citations and their notes and their research is encapsulated. And that's what I looked at to do the assessment.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So yeah, I have databases. I would help them sometimes find websites that they could use. But yeah, it could be anything.
And I could see, like, for those of us who maybe don't have the budget for Noodle Tools, I could see how you could replicate a lot of what you're saying with free resources that would probably not be as smooth.
For sure. And I will say that, like, again, it's my 13th year. I think our Noodle Tool subscription for the whole district is around $500. And it is by head count or school size, but they have a free account as well. And I know other people use other things, but the Noodle Tools is ad free and it was designed by teachers. And the way it's set up for me is really nice and easy for my level of students to use.
I keep saying I need to get back to that. And you are reminding me that I really need to get back to that because it sounds like such a great organizing tool and research tool.
It is. And I think it's nice. I just want to say, I know Google now has a lot. Like we use Google Apps for Education. So there's some things in there. You can do citations. You can do this. But I think it's nice for the kids to have something separate because then they think about it more. If they're just up at the top of a document and popping in a URL or something, and then that comes up as a citation, it gets lost sometimes in the translation of this. They're more purposeful and mindful about, and it's funny because you'll hear them say, oh, did you cite that? Because I don't think that's in your bibliography.
Nice. That's when you know they're really, like, that's the lesson landing right there.
Right.
I know you're not teaching this lesson now, but how long did you run with this lesson?
Probably 8 years.
Okay. So I would imagine over the course of that, you sort of learned a couple of key things that you want to kind of have in mind, or what were some changes maybe you made as you went along?
So some of the changes that I made were, and I sort of alluded to it earlier, if you're doing a biography, I don't want the standard, like this person was born, this person died. What are their achievements? Why are you interested in them? That kind of a thing. I really had to work hard to help the kids to focus on what they could talk about in 3 minutes at the end. And that helped them narrow down their sources, their information, or expand it, like my aglet friend who needed to go all the way into shoelaces. But the biggest change that I made was in the beginning, I was wanting them to do a slideshow. And I quickly sort of realized, you know what? That making them do a presentation, I kept the time limit of 3 minutes. But making them do a presentation that I had in mind for their topic, it didn't work as well. And once I opened that up, so that was probably my second year. Once I opened that up and said, your presentation can be anything you want, but you have to convey the information to us, right? Terrific. Really, really just a game changer. And their teachers would invite their teachers sometimes to come and watch, or the principal would come in. They would want, can I get my friends? Sometimes if we ran out of time, they would say, Miss Casieri, can we come and present during lunch?
Wow.
Yes, great.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just saying they really got invested in these projects and they love them. And I recently ran into a high school student who said, "Do you remember what my curiosity project was in sixth grade?" And I didn't, but they did. And that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, clearly the students are digging this lesson. They are into it. What kind of feedback have you gotten from teachers? Have they had anything to say about what the students are maybe porting into their classes?
So the first feedback that I generally get from teachers is, "I can't believe you're letting them research whatever they want." And my response was always, they're learning research skills. So the topic actually doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And, they would not always think that that was correct. But when students were then doing research for social studies or language arts or science in their class, they would say, "Can we use noodle tools? Do we need to cite our sources? What do you want the work cited to look like?" And so then the feedback I was getting is, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
These kids, like the kids know the terminology now,
Mm-hmm.
right? The vocabulary of research. But also, as I said, they were thinking about it because that was my focus for their project,
Right.
is taking notes, getting your stuff together, figuring out exactly what information you're using from your sources and citing them.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that the kids used to struggle with is, if you read something, let's say you choose something and you read the whole article and then there's nothing in it for you, that's not a source.
Right.
And again, with productive struggle, they're reading and they thought it was going to be good, but they already knew, or they had another source that was better.
Right.
And so again, that helps them evaluate, and they start doing that in other classes as well. These are transferable skills.
Yeah. Oh, highly transferable skills.
The bummer for me is that most of the time the teachers, sometimes they would come and see the presentations at the end, but most of the time the teachers were not in the class. So they don't know exactly what I'm teaching. And I had to rely on the students to pass that information along.
Yeah.
So, sometimes that got lost in translation.
Yeah.
But
yeah. No, I know that feeling. I was teaching a class on research skills, and I ended up putting together an email to the teachers saying, like, look, here are specific skills that these kids now should be able to draw on, so that you can tell them, oh, okay, use a database. And the kids are going to go, oh, okay, I know what that is. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And a building has a lot of moving parts, right? And so if I taught the kids at the end of the year,
Yep.
they're taking it to seventh grade with them, right?
That's how I ended up doing mine, because I saw all of the seventh graders over the course of the year, but I only saw some of them. I was only seeing a group of them at a marking period. So same thing. Some of them were bringing those skills to eighth grade, but I sent the eighth grade teachers an email at the end of the year saying, look, all of them have been through, so they all have at least this base to build from. So,
yeah, it's important. And I think letting the teachers know is great.
Yes.
One suggestion that someone made here, she was a consultant in our district. She said, hey, get a student ambassador to report back.
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
To the teacher. Guess what we learned today?
Yeah.
And I think I started trying to do that as well. But also sending an email to the teachers just to let them know, hey, these kids have these skills now and they can use them in your class too.
Yeah. So if somebody is going to pick this lesson up and run with it, is there anything that you would suggest they kind of have in mind as they get going the first time?
It's time consuming. So depending on your situation, like for me, I can set up my grading and I can incorporate these skills because they were hitting the standards that I needed to teach as part of the grade, right? I wanted them to do it during class so that I could be there supervising. And so, like I said, it was probably 12 class periods. And the last 2 were presentations. And the first one was choosing the topic. So you have to be prepared for it's going to take a long time. And kids who say, I'm done after one day are not finished.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't do a good job, but those are the kids that you're going to have to spend more time with. So then that brings me to the second thing is, for me, I did a lot of conferencing. And you just have to be able to know, hopefully, that your class is going to stay on task while you're doing that. Of course, I was in the room,
Right.
but it's very hard to be sort of helping a kid evaluate their sources or maybe change their topic or look for something else and have 23 other kids going crazy in the background.
Yeah.
So in my library, they have their own computers, but I have headphones if they don't bring their own. And I just remind them, stay on task. And then if I needed to, I would do a conference schedule so that
Okay.
everybody knows whose turn it's going to be.
That makes sense.
But that was the biggest thing for me is always the time.
Mm-hmm.
And building an instruction into it, but not being the one who's talking all the time, like letting the kids have the chance to explore and figure some things out.
Yeah. I wonder if you could even, like, I know not everybody's necessarily going to have classes that come to them for library, but I could see this maybe being a collaborative lesson with either a particular subject area, or even if you had like teams in your school, this would be a really great cross-disciplinary sort of a lesson where you could kind of spread it out over, we're going to learn these skills and you're going to use them here and here and here, but let's work together to get this down.
Definitely. And I've also asked the kids, what's a real life problem you could use these skills on?
Absolutely.
Well, if I was going to get a bike or if I wanted to get a job, I could take note, you try and remind them, hey, you research a lot.
Yeah.
What new video game do you want to buy?
Mm-hmm.
How do you decide? Right? Well, I look, or, I ask my friends, well, that's research, right?
Yeah.
You're taking a poll, for instance.
Yeah. I mean, inquiry learning is absolutely authentic because they're digging into the things they're interested. That's what I love about you letting them choose, is that they are digging into the thing they're interested in, and it can't get more authentic than that.
Exactly. And that would be probably another thing is I always made them come up with 3 choices. And sometimes I would have to say, none of these are any good. Too narrow, not going to be school appropriate, whatever the reason was.
Mm-hmm.
And, that hence the list where somebody's like, fine, I'll do teeth.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I love that for you.
I would absolutely be doing teeth. I can tell you that. All right. This lesson is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing it. We are now going to go in a completely different direction, and it's time for our book break.
Book break. Squiddy.
Yay.
So for the book break, you can share any kind of book you like. It could be personal, professional. It could be for the kids, for the adults, whatever you like, whatever you got. Where are we going to go with our book break?
Okay. This book is for adults, for sure.
All right.
And it is called Murder Your Employer. I read widely, right? I will read almost anything, but this book was so entertaining. It's a mystery. It's humorous. The author's name is Rupert Holmes. And a fun fact is he is the same Rupert Holmes who wrote the Pina Colada song. Yeah.
That is just such an
And he
unusual...
wrote this book. I know. It's a weird trivia, but the book is terrific. It is a special school of how to murder your employer and get away with it. And if you don't pass, you don't get to leave the school. So there's high stakes here. But I had the actual book, and then I also listened to the audio, Neil Patrick Harris, and I think the other one is voice is Simon Vance, but the audio was spectacular. So whether you want to read it with your eyes or read it with your ears, Murder Your Employer by Rupert Holmes is so fun.
All right. That's definitely going on my short list. That sounds great.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth the time.
It sounds it. All right. Well, if people want to touch base with you in the future to get more book recommendations, or if they want to just see what you're up to, where should they go looking for you?
So I'm on Blue Sky as Mrs. Casieri. Yay. Thank you. I am also on X as Mrs. Casieri. I'm still there. Because there are people that I follow there that I like, but, I think Mrs. Casieri is on Instagram. That's probably my least active, but I put in there some of the library books that I've weeded, and so that's always entertaining.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Gab. I really appreciate you taking the time. This is such an interesting lesson and a fun lesson. I think people are going to get a lot of mileage out of this. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I hope people love it. And if anybody wants to reach out, you can always email me. I think that's in your show notes, right?
I can throw it in there.
Yeah, go ahead and put my email in there. So if anyone has questions or stuff they want to ask me about the lesson, that's no problem. Okay, happy reading.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes, which include not only a link to the lesson, but also links to the SLLN website, home to a curated list of free upcoming virtual events and resources for school librarians. It's easy to become a member of the network. Just visit the site and use what you like. If you have an idea, a question, or a lesson you want to share, you can email schoolliblearning@gmail.com. That's school, L-I-B, learning@gmail.com. Know someone with a great school library lesson? Let us know. Until next time, be safe, be good, and be well.